is the MBA worth it, right? Like, we know it's not cheap, but a lot of people are like, hey, I feel like I could benefit from an MBA. What would you say to them?
I would say just be very clear what your goal is. And I tell people, I'm like, sticker price is not what you pay for education. Getting that hustle going, that's what you should be seeking for. The MBA was just an avenue.
Hey, this is Gareth Webb, and you're listening to Breakout, a show that cuts through the hiring noise. Here, you'll get an unfiltered view on what early and growth stage companies are doing so that you can take their best practices, processes, and frameworks and implement them to help you build teams more confidently. Thank you, everyone, for joining Breakout Podcast. We are back into the swing of things firmly. Today, I'm joined by a slightly different profile compared to the folks we've been speaking to more recently. We're talking to Sam Hart, who is the founder of an AI startup called Hathr. Sam, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Good. Hey, thanks for having me here.
No, well, good. I mean, we typically deal with lots of startups, scale-ups. We work with enterprise businesses. We work with venture capitalists, PE firms, and helping their companies hire and scale. You're very early stage, I know, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Time is, I'm sure you'll agree, your ultimate commodity at the moment. I want to have everybody understand a little bit about, if you could just give a background on your career today, and then why you've landed up here. Give us a bit of an intro into Hathr and what your mission is.
No, absolutely. Sounds great. So I went to college, and after that I joined the US Air Force, and I was a pilot for about 8 years. I got out. And then I started consulting for the US government, Department of Defense. So everything from Department of Homeland Security to being the Joint Chiefs of Staff for a couple of years, doing major acquisition programs, a few $1 billion each, and then ending up at DoD's industrial policy. So there, everything from running information on foreign capital coming into the United States, investments on behalf of the government. So, we put through 1.2 trillion in total deal value under my team. And everything in between on research opportunities. Yeah, it was cool being able to see it from that high level view and getting to see kind of like, hey, what's out there, right? And so when we got to AI, I'm looking at this stuff and I'm like, hey, big tech's stealing everybody's stuff. Like, everybody's known that for years, right? And so when you type in a Google search, like, yeah, it's useful. It makes your Google searches more relevant, but they're also scraping and using that information and how you think about things to do what they want. And when AI came out, that's a whole nother level. Now you're asking questions. They're hoping to get more information. It was like it came out recently too that Google is reading everybody's files in their Google Drive, even though they've opted out. So that's a whole nother thing, but check it out. And so we were like, hey, let's be a safe option, right? Like, who wants that? Like, maybe I want to keep stuff private. Maybe I run a business that has to deal with compliance. Let's say you're in healthcare. You can't just let your patient's files go out, willy-nilly. Let's say you're in government, you have to protect your files. Heck, let's just say you signed an NDA with someone, you can't just upload that. So we're helping organizations build and white label, like white label AI. So we license our software for people to build their own and then resell, do whatever. And then we're also looking at coming out with private versions of foundational models that you can put healthcare information, being HIPAA compliant, putting in different government data, NDA data, all that other stuff, and running that with Anthropic's plot.
So career in the military, career in government contractor land, observing lots of intricate mass layers of confidentiality and sensitive information. When did the MBA kick in? Because you studied for an MBA as well.
Oh, 100% MBA at the University of Virginia down there is Darden. But yeah, it was actually like when I started working on the business side, because, I'd been in government. I was about strategy. I was about, the operational plan, all that stuff and acquisitions. But then it was like, well, how does the bigger world work? You know what I mean? Like, everybody has to make money. You have to generate value. And so it was like, hey, let's go get an MBA. Let's learn how this works. Like, this is fascinating. It's so interesting. And also my wife's an entrepreneur for the past 10 years. And so getting to learn a little bit more about how her world works. It was so much fun. So just graduated this past spring.
You had to equalize the domestic stress levels. So bring yours up to hers. by following the entrepreneurial path.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's been great. Getting to get a little bit more understanding is always good in a marriage, right?
Yeah, 100% for sure. Let's just touch on this part because it comes up a lot, and we'll go back into kind of the journey, the startup journey. But I do want to touch on, our audience is typically people who are running technology companies, are founders, or it's people running people and talent acquisition teams. A lot of the time, it's people who are listening for career advice. One of the things that comes up a lot is like, is the MBA worth it, right? Like, we know it's not cheap. You may have obviously had assistance because of military background, I'm sure. But a lot of people are like, hey, I feel like I could benefit from an MBA. I'm going to go in and, it's six figures multiples of, depending on which school you go to. Let's call it $250,000. Now, there are companies, especially like Google, Microsoft, all those folks that will hire post-MBA individuals. We have another layer of companies that we work with that are not the top tier tech, but they're getting there. They're growing. They do like it. They like military or consulting or banking, MBA pivot, tech experience. And those folks that land some of those jobs get really nicely paid and they can have great careers. Or you go and start a business, right? You use it as a networking opportunity or a genesis for a product idea. What's your take? Now you've done it, what would you say to the world of people who are on the fence or they're getting to that stage of researching schools and thinking about it? What would you say to them?
I would say just be very clear what your goal is and what's your return going to be. And you can't necessarily totally quantify that because you don't know what you don't. But I think it's tricky. It's like the same debate that's happening in the States right now. Like, do I go to undergrad or do I get a trade job or, whatever? And I'm like, hey, you got to find what's right for you, your economic situation, and what you're doing right now. Like, should you take out an insane amount of debt with, when you have like little to no schools or skills and you're not willing to move to a major job opportunity? Like, maybe not. But like, if you're looking at it from, you have a clear path of what you want to do, you want to go, you're going to change. Like, I'm sure you will. Like, my life is, I'm always making new choices constantly. But if you're on the path to greater opportunity, I think it's something people should consider. Now, I say that too. There are so many ways to find and access money, scholarships, other stuff, grants, all this other stuff to piece together to defray your cost. I tell people, I'm like, sticker price is not what you pay for education. Everything's a negotiation. And there's so many resources, especially if you belong to a disadvantaged community or you have, a certain, that people to start calling. I always say, build your network. The things I learned at my MBA, you can all read in a book, but building the network with like-minded people and getting that hustle going, that's what you should be seeking for. The MBA was just an avenue to that.
Yeah, I think if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, is something I'd consider doing, I'd said, no, absolutely not. Like, waste of money, waste of time. However, now, I think if I were successful enough to exit this particular business, there's every chance I would want to do it simply as a bit of a pause and a reset. And, when you're doing what you're doing and what I'm doing is you're so laser focused on customer and business and team, you don't often look up and sort of look around the world in a more neutral state of mind. And I think that's what an MBA could definitely offer for folks. No, interesting, good advice. I think, in summary, you're saying, what are your objectives? What's your, how are you going to measure return or success? What are the other opportunities? And if you're going to do it, maybe, as you say, treat it as a business transaction, try and negotiate, try and find other sources of funding. Don't take the list price as what you should pay, try and work it out.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
There's so many ways. Yeah.
Good advice.
I was going to say, there are some things that are like really helpful going to an MBA or getting into that ecosystem. You can also access it as just a regular person going to these campuses, figuring things out, how people work. But the network that comes along with an MBA can be incredibly helpful in exposing you to different things like, that you would never do, like accounting, finance, some other just things you wouldn't know about because they're really not in a book. So anyway, sorry to tack onto that.
Yeah, that's a good. No, it's a good way of putting it, because actually, I'll give you a good example. One of our biggest customers, they like, whenever they hire a chief of staff, which would be someone that sort of works closely with one of their execs, they call it chief of staff. The profile is consulting or banking or military, MBA, tech. The reason they like it is just the Swiss Army knife versatility of can you communicate well? Can you write well? Can you understand financial statements? Can you present? And can you think critically? And can you handle stress? Those are kind of the things that, and I think the MBA is probably something that definitely equips you well with all those tools. Essentially, let's kind of come to where you're at now. How long have you been at it for with Hathr?
So I started Hathr in February of this year. And so we've just been, we got our first product probably about a month ago. And that was, kind of like the white label for other companies to, build their own AI on their platform and go and release it on their own premises. And then right now, like we're working on some interesting stuff, bringing privacy and security to these other models. So we're looking at ways to get it to business, because not everybody can afford a large software license, right? And so we're like, well, hey, like how are we going to make this safe for everybody, right? Because our mission is get safe AI into people's hands, because it's artificial intelligence, generative AI is such a huge game changer when you can be able to write a website, write copy for ads, like help with you brainstorm different ideas. But if you're shoving all that just so all your other competitors can have the same generic stuff, like how are you going to get any market differentiation? So that's where we're at right now. We're getting ready to launch a private version for Claude so that we can get it out to the masses. So, honestly, it's, in my opinion, it's one of the top 2 best tools, but it also comes with privacy issues. You can't put proprietary stuff. They even say on their website, they're like, hey guys, watch out. So what we did is we're building out a way to make it private, so all your data stays within your ecosystem. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do like the crazy edits where some people have told me they'll have some information. I don't recommend this, by the way, but they'll have some information. They're like, well, I just took a piece of it. And I'm like, you can't do that. Like, it's not good. And they're like, but I just took it. I'm like, no, you can't do that. Like the whole system needs to be safe and certified and compliant, but also just private, right? It's like, who wants to give away all their data?
So you're not necessarily building this for, it's not necessarily, I was under the impression when we had initially gone over it that it was like AI for government agencies, but you're saying actually you're going to expand it out to anybody who values privacy premium. That's like, you're going to have different products for specialized orgs, but you're also going to have a bigger like mass offering.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I come from the realm of government, right? And they're willing to pay for security, privacy, and compliance like at a premium. And they need it, and they can't use these commercial offerings. So taking something I was familiar with and bringing it to that market. But then, of course, and then you start looking out and you're like, oh my God, like everybody needs something, right? Like let's bring security and privacy, but with the quality of these big models to everybody. Let's do it.
And so you started back in April. Are you doing this, like, how are you funding this? Is it out off your own pocket, and how's that part of the journey going?
No, it's great. We were able to do this self-funded, just a lot of bootstrapping and a mix of that and grant.
Yep.
So we've been able to, been really lucky to be able to find money, but also stay away from conflicts of interest in the meantime. So we'll see what the future holds. Right. Scaling phase is always, spicy for everyone concerned. But right now we're just looking to do just like a regular revenue growth model. And it looks like we're going to be able to do that. So we're excited and stay without any conflicts of interest with people's data. Just stay a private company.
Right.
And stay true to our mission.
Okay. So bootstrapping is a hot topic at the moment. I think we toyed with a raise Q1 of 2023 and quickly realized that there wasn't the time to do it. Like people were not, A, they weren't really investing much.
No.
B, they were definitely not interested in HR or talent technology when, LinkedIn was just a massive therapy room for layoffs, essentially. So, but now that's changing. And I think, everybody, it's so tempting to try and go out there and spend time raising money to grow faster and get bigger. But actually, a lot of businesses, there's some great examples of the ones that have bootstrapped and been disciplined. And I'm sure, there has to be parts of your background that have helped you with that, with military contracting and your MBA. Like how's your career to date kind of helped you with that mindset of like, let's stay lean, let's bootstrap, let's focus and execute well. Like, can you give some tangibles as to like what your background has kind of given you to tackle this journey more effectively?
No, 100%. I mean, I think one of them was, my work for the Department of Defense. And you see all these people who would just get disqualified from contracts. These non-traditional tech people trying to come in and do it. And you're just like, yeah, of course you can't, because you have 5 naughty investors pumping capital and they have a certain amount of control over your company. So it was one of those two. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that it's straightforward, but I think one of the big things I took from my MBA talking about investors and all that, it's like, no, it's a partnership. They're not giving you money and you're not giving them control, just to like be along for the ride. Like, it is a partnership. And if they're a good partner, they're helping you grow with their capital. They're, finding talent, and if you're a good partner, you're trusting them. You are an employee. Like, you don't own your business anymore. Like, you're part of a larger team. You work for them. And that's totally fine. That's great. But you have to make sure that where they got their money, is also clean. Or maybe you don't care. Maybe in an industry that it doesn't matter, but especially in security privacy, like if you're not vetting your investors to make sure that you have control, it matters a lot, So anyway, that's my big take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
So just essentially, from having worked in the industry that if you're going to take external capital, that money has to be thoroughly vetted and legitimate. Like, it can't be, anyone punting on real estate in Florida with some slightly sketchy background. Like, it's got to be highly institutional. Yeah. I think the other thing is what you mentioned there is like, it isn't really even a partnership. Sometimes I think we see companies, they raise VC money. Mm-hmm. You then really work for that VC because they buy their shares. They're never going to sell for less than that. So then if you don't hit a home run, when it comes to exit time, they get their multiple. You typically get pushed down. So it becomes a pointless affair. Seen numerous cases of that where people have exited, but the founders actually, they might have made a couple of mil, but the investors made like tens of, just because of the structure of the deal. And a lot of the time people don't understand that. So is that the goal, to try and stay private and revenue, like growth linked to revenue goals, and set like customer funded rather than investor funded?
Yeah, that's the goal right now. I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I never shut doors. I try not to speak in definitives, but it's also one of those two where it's it is the clearest gauge if you have a good idea or not, or on what you're doing is working, if people pay you money for it. Because that's part of the other thing. It's like, people won't even give you money. Like, you might find some pre-seed, maybe without customer, but all of them need traction. And so if you already have traction and you're getting revenue, like, like, hey, let the market tell you if you have a good idea or not, and like maybe figure out ways to grow.
I couldn't agree more. I think I've slipped into the trap. Like I said, last year, we started to have some good traction. At the time, all sales was me. I took my foot off to go and talk to investors, and I knew as I was doing it, I felt like this is a waste of time, because I could just be getting more money from customers and getting more feedback, getting more learning. And so, we've gone through a bit of a change where we've, added sales capacity aside from myself, and just focused on traction. And it feels really, really good. Like, feels good for me, feels good for the team, feels good for everybody. Like, it's just, a nice robust feeling. But what one of the things that I would find very stressful in your industry is the whole being right at the edge of regulatory changes and compliance. You're and you're saying you want to be this kind of private version of what's available in the AI space. How do you make sure you are really buttoned up there and understand like what's going on, and not just understand what's going on, but like staying right there with it as it's evolving? Because this space is not even understood really, is it, by a lot of people? So
Oh yeah,
it's happening like on the fly. How are you staying ahead?
so a big part of it too is, it's just all the different industry stuff. Like any other industry, like privacy, security, compliance, it's totally an industry. And you have your different publications, you subscribe to the governing bodies that you learn who govern and publish and control the different stuff. And you stay up on it, right? Because that's your job, to provide that value to your customers. Just like if you're in marketing or, then you'd be like, of course I need to know what happened to the Google algorithm. And in our case, it's like, yeah, no, of course we know like the different regulations coming out, over the next, 6 to 12 months, and planning for that so that you can make sure that customers don't get blindsided. Because like there's nothing worse, right? Than you have to like, hey, you call up your service rep and you're like, hey, what's going on? When's this going to happen? They're like, well, I don't know. And you're like, no, you need answers because your data's in there. So that's how we do it. We make sure, we're industry professionals. And so we're plugged into the data streams that matter to us and our customers, and we stay up on it, and then just make sure that that's built into our product rollout.
Do you ever listen to, I'm a huge evangelist of the All In podcast. Have you ever listened to it?
Oh yeah. No, totally.
So it's David Sachs and Chamath. There's basically 4 billionaires that basically shoot the shit once a week on macro, tech, investing, politics. And the reason I like it is they're all so wealthy, they don't care who they upset. They focus exclusively on the truth, and they debate with each other about their own belief systems, right? And they don't care if they butt heads, and they're friends afterwards. So it's like, it's a very refreshing place to go and listen to smart people who haven't really got an agenda. And they all like poker, obviously, which is why it's called that. But one of the guys in there said once that like, if some businesses, if you think of it like a combination lock, like some businesses are just 1 or 2 numbers. So you get the 2 numbers right, the lock opens. Yeah. Some are like 3 or 4, but some are 20. And for the lock to open, like honestly, that's how I feel like our business is a bit like that, where it seems quite straightforward, but actually there's lots of locks. And, once all of them open, then the business is successful. So that has to be, customer onboarding, intuitive product, sticky product, really nice pricing, good analytics and usage, easy to get information. For us, it's, how do we make sure they get everything they want really quickly? And so anyway, we don't have to be as focused on governance and regulatory change as you. We have to be focused on where's the skills shift going. 2020, 2021, it was like, right, everyone's remote, everybody wants remote. Now companies are like, well, we need people close to airports or in 2 or 3 days a week. That then affects the talent pools that are available for certain positions. So that affects the data sets that we're trying to put together. So, every industry has nuances that you just need to be mindful of. And, the good, I've always been a believer that, the old world of hiring was just too expensive and too siloed and too opaque. So we're just doing everything to make it the opposite of those things, And so I think similar to what you're talking about, if you want to be, for people that value privacy, that's where you come in. So what's the vision? What's the plan for the business? Like right now you're focused on customers, you have the white label that you're rolling out. What's the bigger vision? Like, where do you want to end up 5-10 years time?
Honestly, that's so far out. But like our mission is to disrupt the private, like big tech's grip on everyone's data. That's our mission. So get AI to people and stay private. But, so we're, like I said, we're rolling out, like compliant model for, a compliant version of Claude for healthcare and government, and law and all that other stuff. Like, love to keep expanding that out and just keep offering more stuff, because there's so many tools. Like, oh, this is another great example. Slack just got hit because they were reusing everyone's data in their Slacks. I was like, what? like, so you have Slack for Business, you have all these things like unique to your company, and they're just like siphoning off all your internal chats to see the guts of how your business works, like to feedback. I'm like, oh my God. So like that's a great example. I mean, like I think this really speaks to everything. Like if you're in a business or you just exist in the world, you don't want to share everything. Like, don't get me wrong. I use ChatGPT, right? It is such a useful tool. But do I use it for anything related to my business? Oh, heck no. Absolutely not. You know what I mean? Like, I also like to eat my own dog food, use my own tool.
You don't. You won't use it. You don't use it. You won't use it for your own.
I don't use it for internal stuff, right? Because you just don't want to.
Okay.
You know? But like external things, like I was listening to like helping write ad copy for like a Facebook ad, super helpful. But all your internal stuff, like let's say you have a HIPAA document. Let's say you have a patient client document. You want to look into it, or you're a biller, or let's say you're an insurance agent, and you just like you want to get some of the tedium out of the way. You can't use those commercial options. Or like I would love to expand into a bunch of other tech products with this privacy layer on top of it, because everybody knows the stuff they like, right? You know, so it's like, hey, well, what if we made it safe? What if you didn't have to think twice? What if the compliance was just built in? You just got to go. So that's what we're doing. That's what I want to do over the next 5 years.
Okay.
Just help build that privacy layer for everyone.
Are you at the point yet where anyone can just come and sign up and start using like any users, or does it have to be a certain type of customer they can start working with you guys?
So right now, anyone can come and reach out. Be happy to talk to you. And then our commercial version is going to be coming out. I can send out the link, but sign up right now to get on our wait list so that, you know, when we deploy our private version of Claude, you know, you can just get going, just sign in, start using. We have some other cool features in there. Like we have a larger context window, a really big document library. So it solves a lot of the problems too, just on like the things that annoyed me with other companies' large language models that people get to use. They're like, let's make it better and private. So doing some of that. So
okay,
I can throw that into the link for people to
cool,
check out.
Interesting. What and then just I guess let's link it back a little bit to kind of, you know, you're going to go out to the world and start building a team. Would you be going remote first? Would you have people in a set location if you started hiring, or how are you doing things now?
So right now we're remote first. You know, we're a tech company, and right now we have, you know, it's me and then a contract workforce. You know, we're still in growth phase, trying to control costs. And I think it just depends on your business, right? If you have a warehousing company, you know, you probably have to have them in person. If you're, I think open.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. I think
kind of,
being able to build culture, even if you're remote first, you have to think about the implications of that and be okay with it. Like you can't have the same culture if you're totally remote first, just because you're not bumping into each other. You know, it's not like you can like trade mugs at Christmas time. You know what I mean? Like I think that little stuff matters. Coming from, you know, really strong cultures, especially in like the military and in national security, just seeing how, you know, you just spend so much time with people and it matters. But on the flip side, you know, you also, man, you get so much talent. You get so many smart people out in the world that you'd never meet or be able to work with before for something as arbitrary as, you know, they just live in a different state. So I think,
especially with AI and technology software, right? It's kind of hypocritical to be like a tech evangelist, but rely on tech getting like being a barrier, right? It's like, no, I need you here to whiteboard. I mean, you can do that sometimes, but it's not required every day. Yes, super helpful. I think what would you say, just before we start to wrap up this conversation, you know, one or two pieces of your military kind of background that have helped you as an entrepreneur, if other people are listening, because I know there's plenty of people out there who are currently or formerly like associated to the forces and they're in technology, you know, maybe thinking about being an entrepreneur. What have you found that's helped you from that previous chapter of life?
I think it's question everything, and not in like a jerk kind of way. Be a helpful, collaborative question. Because some people just love to shut stuff down. Yeah. Like they can go jump out a window, you know, and go swim. But like if you're actively trying to solve a problem. You're like, huh, what about this? What about that? And then instead of giving it to someone else, going out and then doing the testing, I think that's my biggest things. Just like, do not settle, and then also take responsibility. So just, be helpful and collaborative. I think one of the biggest things I learned from, being a military officer was empathy. Start with a question, never with a statement, because you never know. And then just going and being curious, and then being action oriented, right? But that's all the stuff that goes along with being an entrepreneur. Be empathetic, be action oriented.
Yeah, but I think I would say my take on why I would hire a military ex-military down the line, if I ever did. I've interviewed a few, and it's always the thing that is apparent is preparedness, questioning, clarifying, which they sound really obvious, but they don't happen a lot, even at the exec level. You don't get preparedness all the time, especially for hiring, bizarrely. Questioning, clarification. Yeah, honestly, like recently we kicked off a VP level position with a customer of ours, and the SVP came and was incredibly prepared, had a one-pager, had sample profiles, people he'd rejected already on the call.
Right.
And it made everything so straightforward, right? It's just he'd done a lot of the preparation. Now, we've still had to go and do a load of work, but I said to him at the end, I was like, you wouldn't believe how rare this is, because most people would just turn up and spitball, and they're like, I think this and maybe this, but let's see. And then we'll, then you get a month in and you're sort of wishing you'd gone back to that point. I use I think Abraham Lincoln said it, isn't it? If you give me like 4 hours to chop a tree, I'll spend the first hour sharpening the blade. One of the former US presidents said that, and I kind of heard that a few years ago and have reapplied it to many parts of my life, where I wouldn't say it's about procrastination. It's just make sure you prepare diligently and know the right time to start once you've questioned and clarified. That's super interesting. What have you found harder than you'd expected about starting this whole Hathr experience?
Finding people and volume, right?
You mean finding people like customers?
Yeah.
Finding people to listen to you.
It's like everything is changing constantly. And, part of it is like, all right, I just got to do my best. I have to try new things. I hate this term. I hate the fail fast term. I'm like, no, like learn fast. If you're failing fast, then you're still drowning. Like you're just like, learn faster. And so, I think that's the hardest part. And then the highest highs, I think with entrepreneurship, I'm sure you can feel as another business owner, is like the highest highs and the lowest lows, and just keeping an even keel. You're like, you know what? It's not a big deal. Like, I'm not going to let my feathers get ruffled, pop a bottle of champagne, like maybe go for a run if I'm bummed, but, try and keep it as just steady Eddie as possible, for you and the team. Because, you're that pillar. If you're crumbling, the rest of the house falls on down.
You're essentially saying like, you have these big highs and then, there's lows. You just got to stay on an even kilter for yourself and the entire team.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because, if you can't become like, of course, don't be a rope, right?
Yeah.
It's like leading with empathy. Like I was saying before, I was like, still need to be tough with people, but, just emote, but not let yourself get too into don't let them run you. What's the saying about businesses?
No,
try and work on your, in your business.
Yeah.
Or don't let your business run you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the one. Same thing. Don't let your emotions run you.
Yeah. I was 2019 was our first year, and it was a phenomenal first year. It was, straightforward, really easy. I came home to my wife February 2020, and I was like, this is too easy. I literally said, this is way too easy. We're about to like blow up. And then COVID came about in March. So that summer was obviously pretty topsy-turvy, to say the least.
Oh, man,
but then actually hiring kind of carried on again, and it was all quite hectic. So you had like really good, really stressful, really good again, but stressful because it was so busy.
Yeah.
And then I got a bit numb to successes, because I was like, well, there's no point I guess it's a learning curve of leadership. I was like, there's no point getting excited about the win because I know something shitty will happen in a month or two, because that's just how it kind of was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now I'm very guardrailed. I'm super psychologically guardrailed now, like where I look at a win as a series of wins. Like I don't get excited by one thing. It's like that's why I love quarters. So if the quarter was good, it means everything was consistent among the team, and then the next quarter has to be similar. You have to have 2 back-to-back quarters. Because what I found was I was just feeling relief. If we had a victory or a really good success, like we've closed a 6-figure subscription, I would just feel relief. And that's like, life's a bit too short to be feeling like you go from relief to relief. You have to feel good.
Yeah.
So that's why we do things in,
I like that.
yeah, quarters.
Yeah. I'm going to totally steal your quarter system because trend line matters, right? Not higher.
Yes.
I like that a lot. And your quarter is like short enough so that you don't have to look at a year or a semi-annual, like, oh God, yeah, that's too long for our chimp brains. I think a quarter, I like a lot.
No, I honestly, like, the older I get, like a week is a day and a month is like a week. So a quarter feels like a month of what it felt like when I was in my 20s. So the quarterly thing is great. And then we're a remote team and we do quarterly meetups. Like we get together, like we did Austin in May. We're meeting in Scottsdale in September. And it's a good way to be like, turn up to that, having committed and done well. And we're going to deep dive into performance. And no one wants to turn up to that. I mean, we have weekly team meetings, but no one wants to turn up to that quarterly meet, having let anyone down. So that's kind of a cultural, call it like cadence, I guess, of like, hey, we all got to look at each other in the eye and know that we've done good work. Well, look, I really appreciate, I know, like I said, you're very early on, great career journey and trajectory. You could have gone in lots of easier options. So I commend you for not doing that and doing the startup route, because you could have gone big tech, big consulting, big banking, I'm sure, with your background. So it'd be good to pick up again in a year and see where we're both at with things. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been really interesting to talk to you, Sam.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the outreach. I'm excited to check back in where you guys are too in a year. It'll be cool to see. Especially, it's a wild world out there. So I'm excited to hear how your quarters are going.
Thank you. Yeah. Cheers. I appreciate it.
Hey, right back at you. Have a good one.